Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department Podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guest is two-time Caldecott Medal-winning illustrator and author, Sophie Blackall. Making art can feel unimportant when life gets in the way. But as Sophie and I discuss, when life is especially difficult, art is especially important. On one of the topics, Sophie and I talk about what a sludgy color palette is and why it's okay to use one. She shares what value art making has during our most difficult moments. And Sophie explains why all bookmakers should take bookmaking seriously. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I've listened to enough now of your podcast to know that you hit record and then everybody says something like, oh, I hope you're not recording this bit because I have a cold like I do right now. And then that all becomes part of it because you leave it all in there. So,
yeah, I did that with, oh my God, hello, brain, work, Selina Alko. She had a cold.
Yes. And our friend Rafael López, who I adore, who was talking about some noise he was making with his mouth, and you left that in too.
Look, Sophie, here's how I see this. You and I are sitting down somewhere, we're having a cup of tea or something, which I am currently having. We're just shooting a breeze for an hour, talking about books, and that's how it goes. That's about as like professional / casual / unprofessional. This is gonna get.
I'm all for being a fallible human being. So let's go.
Oh, well, let's start there. I don't do titles for my podcast, but that would be the title for this one.
Excellent.
Sophie Blackall is fallible. People will see that and go, what? And then they'll listen to it. Billion downloads.
100%.
All right. So here's okay. First of all, hi. Thank you for wanting to be on this. I really, really, really appreciate it. I'm sure you've heard this a gajillion times, but my daughters, they're currently 15. So this is a couple of years ago, but they're obviously very, sometimes I'll talk to my kids about who I talk to on the podcast and they'll go, oh yeah, I remember her, or I remember that book. And of course, when I mentioned you, first thing they said was, Ivy and Bean?
That's lovely. That's lovely.
Them and like 2.5 million other readers or however many there have been over the years.
It's a beautiful thing. Annie,
sure.
My beloved Annie Barrows and I often will be somewhere and a person we think is far too old to have read our books will come up with a tattered book in their hand and say, I read this when I was little, which simultaneously is the nicest thing in the world to hear and also makes us feel very old all of a sudden. But it's not surprising. We began those books 20 years ago. So.
Oh, good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. My kids like to say, when you were born in the 1900s.
They're not wrong.
I know. It hurts. Speaking of hurts, so I edit a lot. So if you cough or, I don't know, bump your knee against your table or answer the door or all of that gets taken out.
Great.
If I ask a question and you go, I'd rather not answer that question, that gets taken out.
Okay.
This is like your car to drive, basically. I'm in the passenger side with a map, printed Rand McNally map.
I like a map.
No GPS here. We have one. We have a United States, contiguous United States map. Just in case.
I shouldn't say this aloud, but I once wrote a message from the Tooth Fairy to my young son. There you go. I've just blown every fantasy of the Tooth Fairy. My children had separate Tooth Fairies with long backstories, and I clearly wasn't thinking when I began this with my first child, because then I had to sustain it not only for all of their teeth, but then the second child's teeth. And I was just cursing myself. What was I thinking? Mm-hmm. But at some point, because it became overwhelming, I think I was on deadline, and my children just had so many teeth and lost so many of them in a short amount of time, and I was just working overtime to keep up with the blessed letters from the Tooth Fairy. So I retired Eggy's Tooth Fairy. He was let go. He was made redundant. He wrote a very sad letter. And I think it was like at about midnight. And I was just, I cannot do this anymore. So I retired the Tooth Fairy, and it was very sad. It was very sweet. It was, I've really enjoyed being your Tooth Fairy, but this is my last tooth. And they're sending me to Czechoslovakia, which just, I don't know, came to me. And it was written in, why am I telling you all of this? It was written in like 4-point type size, like with a magnifying glass. These letters were tiny. And in the morning, Eggy was up very early. We had a map on the wall, which was an old school classroom map, a vintage map of the world. So all of the place names were imperialist, archaic, no longer accurate. Right. But he was tracing a very sad finger along to find Czechoslovakia. I know. It's one of my many terrible, terrible parenting moves. We began with fallible. There we go. Fallible.
I had a question in my head for you about how many teeth have you kept, but you know what? Let's keep it going. Let's keep this let's keep this brisk. I listened to your chat on Design Matters with Debbie Millman.
Oh, that was a long time ago and a lovely conversation.
I always forget. I used to listen to the Design Matters all the time. I haven't. I occasionally do from time to time. I always forget how earnest and breathy her questions are. Like she's like, "Is it true that you learned to draw with a stick on the beach? How so?" No disrespect, Debbie. She's not listening. I love your work.
I love Debbie. She's amazing.
Through that chat, I learned that you have synesthesia.
Oh, yeah. But I don't think that's terribly uncommon with illustrators. Do you? Do you have it?
I don't know.
Oh.
Although the same day I learned that, my son and I were talking about the color of smells.
There you go.
Weirdly. I love when the universe does that.
Yeah. Now the algorithm does it for us, which is far more disconcerting.
I totally deleted a chunk of questions about tech. So we're not talking about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so then you have it. I mean, it is just that associating one sense with another. And those of us who have it or think we have it or think that way have it in all different kinds of things. And we're very emphatic that our connections are the true and only possible connections. Like for me, the number 3 is yellow. Both my children have it, and we will just go head to head of, no, are you insane? 3 is blue. What are you talking about? So yeah, we feel quite strongly about our own versions of it. But I think it's true for I've talked to a lot of illustrators, and I think a lot of people have this. Yeah.
I don't think I do. I'd like to, but I really don't think I do. We were driving, he and I. It was about 8 o'clock, so still sort of dusk. That really pretty time when you have the tree silhouettes against the sky and all that. It's really, and it was about 75 degrees, like 75 at night. It's just a really pretty temperature. Windows were down, and we're just talking about stuff anyway. And he said, "Oh, the air smells so good right now." And I go, "Yeah, it smells green." And he goes, "That's what I was thinking." And was it really synesthesia, or was it just that we were surrounded by woods? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So like, how many people really do have it when, like, and then we started talking like chimney smoke. When we think of chimney smoke, we think of gray, but that's because smoke is gray.
Right. Yeah.
So
yes, I think it's more like hearing music or hearing a particular noise that makes you think of a I've been reading recently about fantasia and aphantasia and hyperphantasia. Do you know about these things?
The Disney movie, other than that?
Fantasia is the ability to form mental images, which most of us have. It's a spectrum. Most of us have some capacity to form mental images. So if we imagine an apple, we can see an apple in our mind, right? But those with aphantasia cannot. It's just black. So they can, when they see something in front of them, if it's taken away, it's gone. So this is a confounding thing for those of us who can't quite imagine not being able to see anything, but for those who have never been able to see anything, it's just how they are. But all these studies that have been done, like how that affects a person's short-term memory, how it affects their ability to imagine, how it affects their connection to other human beings. Because if you are aphantasic and the person you love walks out of the room, you cannot recall their face. If you have children and they grow up, you can't picture them as babies anymore. You don't have that memory that you can, that those of us who are in the sort of majority can remember the weight of our child in our arms and their little wobbly heads on our shoulders and the warm feeling of the drool trickling down your neck or whatever it happens to be. The people with aphantasia don't have those things. But then apparently it can make really spectacular artists because they are so in the moment and they're making these marks that just come in a more physical way, I guess, from the hand rather than from the brain. Anyway, I find it fascinating. And then hyperphantasia at the other end of the spectrum is when you cannot shut it off. You can recall everything that you've ever seen. And so that's very difficult for people who've experienced trauma because they just relive it over and over again.
Is that the same as photographic memory?
I think it's similar. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm in the majority. When I imagine an apple, if I'm closing my eyes, which I'm doing now, and imagining an apple, it's red. It's shiny. It's got a little white highlight on it, but that's probably a lot of that has to do with my subconscious just feeding me all the apple images I've ever seen over the course of my life. You know what I mean?
Right. Do you ever play that drawing game where you try and draw things from memory without looking at the thing?
I try not to, but yes.
Yeah. Right. It's a thing that a bunch of us illustrators tend to do when we get together, and it's just mortifying but hilarious and humbling because you sort of think, oh, I know what that looks like, and then you put pen to paper and it's, oh my God, I cannot, for the sake of me, I cannot draw this.
Right.
But so funny. And I think it's so good to exercise that muscle because I was telling some person considerably younger than I am recently about how when I moved to this country in 2000, I packed with me my pictorial dictionary, which was a tome of like a reference book, because I was doing mostly editorial illustration and I needed to know what a sloop looked like, how many masts or sails, or a stoat or a sloth. And I would be able to look at this book because it was early internet and we didn't have the click that we have now that brings up every image of anything in the world. But so to exercise that muscle, to force ourselves to remember what does an apple look like and why do we think of a red one rather than a green one and blah, blah, blah.
Right. I wonder, so when I imagine imagery, I see the apple, but it's sort of like in a sort of circular color. Think of it like a spot illustration. But around the spot illustration, it isn't white, it's black, which is how I remember my dreams. When I think of a dream or I recall a dream, I see what's directly in front of me, and I wonder if this is probably just normal. I'd see what's directly in front of me and then imagine there's like it sort of dissipates to black around the periphery. I don't know what that means. Probably nothing.
Yeah, kind of Victorian.
Oh, we're going to talk about Victorian later, Sophie.
Oh, okay.
Before we go to 1823, let's go to 2023. I visited the Brandywine Museum, which I'm happy to say is close to where I live now. I used to live in Brooklyn.
Right.
Windsor Terrace first and then Bay Ridge.
Good places.
Great places. So anyway, I was down there and I checked out their Rooted exhibition. As you know, the theme was family and nature in contemporary children's book illustration. 4 of my favorite subjects in one: family, nature, kids' books, the Brandywine. Love it. You're a close 5th. Art by Sophie Blackall was number 5. speaking of art from you, your book Farmhouse was exhibited among other books from other creators. The thing with Farmhouse, Sophie, and many other books you've created since Ruby's Wish in 2002, is that many of the, air quotes, rules today's illustrators are told to follow, you break. Namely, your characters sometimes have dot eyes. The palette is subdued. And I hope everyone is sitting for this next one. The text for Farmhouse rhymes. Stylistically speaking, your work, one can describe as, in the most positive light possible, old-fashioned, classic, yesteryear, Barbara Cooney meets Virginia Lee Burton vibe, right? Now, many illustrators listening to this, and I'm guessing you, have heard from some publishing professionals, not everybody, but more than a few, usually at a certain conference, which I will not name, that illustrators are not supposed to use dot eyes or a subdued palette or rhyming text or a style that can be considered quote unquote old-fashioned, as if it's a bad thing. It's not. So my question is, why can you do it, but they can't? Is it because you're Australian?
Oh, I get away with a lot being Australian.
I'm sure you do.
However, I think I might push back on every one of those three things.
Please push back.
I don't think... Wait, I'm going to pull a copy of Farmhouse off my shelf to make sure I'm not lying when I say this.
I didn't say all of them. I didn't say all of them.
Yeah, I don't think they have dot eyes. No, I'm going to push back against that. There are definite pupils within an eyeball.
But aren't there certain scenes like where the characters are backed up a little bit, where the eyes are dots?
Where they're tiny? They're still, you can still see the whites of their eyes.
All right.
They're eyelids. They're definitely eyelids, Giuseppe. I'm going to push back against the dot.
My bad.
Not that I have anything against dot eyes. I would defend the dot eye as well as I'm looking and saying I don't think I really do. But I love a dot eye. I'm going to push back against the did you call us a subdued palette
not
or pastels or something?
No, God, I wouldn't say that.
Saturated.
Subdued as in like it's not Crayola crayon colors.
No, but there's quite a lot of black in the book. It's quite dense and rich. Yeah, no, I'm going to push back against that. And then the third one was rhyming. Okay, the rhymes are really found rhymes when they come. There's no rhyming scheme. No. It is not a regular, ABAB or any other rhyming scheme. It's quite random and they fall where they fall.
Yeah.
This book was written in one long sentence.
Yeah. It still rhymes though.
Yeah. I mean, now and then it does. And that was an interesting thing that sometimes I tried to get rid of that because it felt too neat or something. And then I realized, no, this really helps move this along. This book has a galloping rhythm to it.
Yes, it does.
It helps keep us in that momentum of time and space and turning the page. And I'm going to leave these rhymes. So yes, there they are, for better or worse. Okay. But rhyming is something I wrestle with a lot. I think where the rhyming becomes problematic is when it's really forced, when you can see that a writer has just tried to make this work and so they've put the subject in the wrong place in the syntax of the sentence in order to make the line rhyme, right. Or that it is just a sort of sing-song, relentless rhyming scheme that just makes you want to tear your hair out. Those are the things to avoid, I think.
Sure. I'm going to push back on the pushback. I'm right on the subdued thing. I know you don't describe it that way, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I mentor illustrators day to day, usually 5, 6, sometimes 7 or 8 illustrators per day, 5 days a week. Okay. I'm not making any of this up. I'm hearing from illustrators what they're hearing from portfolio reviews that they've received, from conferences, from wherever, social media, etc., that, quote unquote, kids like bright colors, that their portfolios that have palettes reminiscent of what you're doing are not bright enough, or that they need to brighten their palettes because they're using too many sort of softer hues, neutrals that accompany brighter areas in the pieces. Sure. I'm not saying you took all of your art and, slid the desaturation slider to the left, a couple of inches. I'm saying that what illustrators are hearing, folks listening to this episode right now have heard, especially during portfolio reviews from folks, is that like, oh, well, you need to brighten your colors because, kids aren't going to they don't like this kind of art, which is patently false. And what I often say to illustrators when they tell me about this, I bring you up a lot. You, Rebecca Green, Beatrice Alemagna.
Yeah. I
have to say it in Italian. I can't say Beatrice Alemagna.
No,
no. Sounds much better. Beatrice Alemagna.
Beatrice.
There's so many. I mean, Sergio Ruzzier, who I know you know. And
yeah, Laura Carlin. Yeah.
It goes on and on and on.
Sure.
Look at all of these folks who are allowed to do the things that illustrators these days are told not to do. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
Right. I think, and I see this too with illustrators, and perhaps we'll say the same thing, that there's a difference between using a palette that is not bright colors, bright saturated primary or secondary colors,
right.
The paint straight out of the tube, right. That is more murky and subdued and subtle, and as though, as you said, the saturation scale has been moved a bit to the left. And I love nothing more than sludge. I love to begin with a sort of tea-stained piece of paper and then work over the top of that so it has this underlying murkiness to it. But I think with everything, it is making, like, setting up a rule and then breaking it. And with the palette thing, if you're going to use those subdued colors, then give us a burst of bright red, or give us a dash of hot pink, or a dark black little spot in there. And I think that's something that all of those illustrators you just mentioned, and I'll add myself to it, that we all like to do that. So we love this sludgy palette, but then also it's the inspirations that I have that I keep near at hand all the time are things like old Victorian labels or Chinese firework packaging, or any number of things that have been left out in the sun for a while, where one color doesn't get bleached and all the others do, that you have these punchy bits in amongst the sludgy bits. There
exactly. How I like to describe it with illustrators is, imagine you're listening to an orchestra. If all of the instruments in all of the sections are playing different notes at the same high volume,
right,
you won't be able to hear anything.
Exactly.
It'll just be noise.
Exactly.
But if everyone is playing at a quieter, more harmonious collection of notes, and then you have a solo where you've got the trumpet or the sax or the flute or someone else individually going a little louder than everyone else is, you're going to hear them crystal clear. And that's harmony. That's music.
Right.
That's what you're trying to capture with a harmonic, balanced color palette.
And we can apply the same thinking to any kind of statement where we say children don't respond to paler palettes.
Yeah, okay.
It's a sweeping statement that we know is not going to be true, that new children's responses to things are a vast spectrum and are nuanced.
Exactly.
And yeah.
It's so funny. A lot of these folks appreciate that so much of our lives exists on spectrums, except what kids like.
Right.
Isn't that ironic?
And also I get it that it's hard when people are starting out and they want advice, like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting ahead? And so if someone can say, maybe don't use rhyme, maybe try to write without rhyme, that perhaps that's useful, which is not to say rhyme shouldn't exist, but maybe this is something you could try. I don't know. It's it's hard to not have anything useful, because if we're constantly saying in a wafty way, but everything is fine and everything can work, then that's not particularly helpful either.
Yeah, often there are exceptions to this, but I like to think that any statement in the children's publishing space, in life really, but let's just, that's too big right now for our conversation. Let's just stick to books. Any statement made to help others in the children's publishing space that starts with always or never.
Right.
Ignore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
More or less. Always listen to Sophie Blackall. That one you do not ignore. I mean, anyone who has had any experience with children knows that they respond to everything. I mean, they respond to a freaking empty cardboard box.
Exactly.
More than they respond to a corner full of toys.
Yes.
Okay, we've sorted that one out. This podcast is produced by the Illustration Department, a global leader in online education for illustrators. Visit illustrationdept.com for offerings like mentorships and portfolio reviews, testimonials, our alumni showcase, our best-selling Substack, and more. That's illustrationdept.com. And now, back to our conversation. Quite a few of the illustrators that I work with carry with them pretty heavy loads of worry, anxiety, depression, stress. Their kitchen is sinking. That's a true story. An ailing parent, a loss of a loved one, an injury to, let's say, one's hand that gets in the way of their work, and it can keep going. Not to mention, building a freaking bookmaking practice, which is also heavy. You, Sophie, are no stranger to what I'm talking about, in more ways than one. How do you find a way to make art, to draw, to paint when life is heaviest?
I think I was listening to Selina talk to you about a similar thing, and I think it would be true. Right. I think it would be true for most creators who would answer this question, which is it's the way to work through all of the other stuff. It's the catharsis. It's the therapy, if you will. It's the why do anything except this, because it's the way of processing. It's the way of making sense of the world and our place in it. Yeah. And in these, I've been saying in these times now for at least 10 years, these times that
there's an age thing. When you get to sort of like where we are age-wise, you start saying stuff like in these times. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
It's not our fault.
I was working on Hello Lighthouse, which was.
I've heard of it.
Felt to me this transformative place I would go every day in the painting process. I took myself into the middle of the sea. I think I was working on it in 2016, 17, and it was a time of political turmoil, and we were reeling every day from what was happening around us. Right. Oh gosh, social inequality and everything that was happening at that time. My brain is kind of doing a slow kind of remembering of those particular years. And I remember a kid asking me in a school visit, one of the most lucid, lovely questions, and I love kids' questions. There are no bad questions. But this kid said, "What were you feeling when you made this book?" Which took me a moment to just stop reeling, because it just felt like such a profound question. And I said, I was taking myself somewhere else, which is, I think, why we make books and why we read books. And the whole joy of a book is that it can transport us somewhere else. And we're so privileged to be able to make them, because we get to spend all of that time taking ourselves somewhere else, and we can choose where that place is. And sometimes it can be a dark place. Sometimes it has to be, because again, part of the other conversation, but children are capable of a whole enormous nuanced level of what emotional content they can digest and respond to in a book. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying the same thing in circles, that we get to do this thing, and it is a response to what we're living in the moment. It's a response to whatever situation we are in personally and socially and politically, and we can make a book at the end of it that it hopefully does some good to some kid reading it.
Would you say you take what you do as an illustrator and writer of children's books seriously? Like, what I mean by that is, do you see what you do as I can't think of a better word than this, calling?
A calling sounds very lofty.
I know, it's not the right word.
No, I mean, it's this balance that I think many of us wrestle with, which is taking ourselves very seriously, and also the thing we fight against, which is the need to be self-deprecating, which is, I'm just, it's not brain surgery, or it's not. I remember being at a party in 2001. It was right after 9/11, and somebody said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I make children's books. What do you do?" And they said, "We're trying to find the response, the antidote to the pathogen that is possibly coming with the bio warfare that is predicted as it was that kind of, right, well, carry on. Shouldn't you be back there doing that right now?"
Right.
And I feel so lucky to be doing what I do, and I do think it's really important. I have had the very great privilege and honor and pleasure of working with UNICEF and Save the Children. And my God, the people working in NGOs all over the world, especially at this particular time when every conceivable amount of funding has been cut, people who are just trying to make the world a better place for those of us living on this planet, but especially for children, I think about it all the time, and it's a way to put everything in perspective for me.
Yep.
I think about what the people are doing to try and uphold the United Nations Convention of the Rights of a Child, the 5 basic things, shelter and access to healthcare and education and clean water and food, and not to be in a place of civil unrest and to be shot at. It's very useful to think about everything we do in the context of everything that everybody else does. But I do take it seriously. I take it really seriously, because I think kids deserve that. They deserve the very best books we can make.
Yep.
I don't know if you know about this thing we do called Milkwood, which is
You founded it. It's a retreat in upstate New York that you founded in 2022. Oh, we're going to talk about that.
Exactly. Thank you. The whole idea of beginning Milkwood was to make a place where we could have long conversations about complicated things that we can really talk about, and listen to each other with people with different ideas, and that we can bring those ideas to the table and perhaps find ourselves being a little more open-minded about something that we may previously not have been, and consider somebody else's point of view more fully, and all of those things. And it has been an extraordinary experience to do that, and to have, at this point, about 500 people come to Milkwood, and to have these kinds of conversations that you can only have sitting around a table with food, and to feel safe and respected. This lovely lens that I have through Milkwood is that we get to see a ton of bookmakers. I think, as I said, about 500 people have come to Milkwood, but every year about 1,200 people apply for 100 spots. And with our advisory committee, we look at every single person's work. We look at their books, we look at their websites, we read what they are saying about their work practice, their frustrations, what they're hoping to get out of a potential residency or a retreat. And it paints, it's still a small portrait of our industry, but it paints a little picture of this of 1,000, 1,200 people's experience of being in this community. And I feel like I just feel so lucky to have this window into it and to hear from people and to see the work they're making and the struggles. And I'm sure you are in a similar position with having access to all of that and hearing about what it's actually like for people. I remember one person saying to me once, and I suspect you've had this kind of thing too, saying, can you give me a leg up? I just want to fast track this. And I just said, there's no fast track. There's no fast track. It's like childbirth. You got to get that thing out one way or another. You know, you can have the epidural and pay for it later, or you can have a natural birth and pay for it you're going to pay for it one way or another. This is birthing a book or beginning a career. You can use whichever metaphor you like is difficult. I mean, even the people who come out of the gate, then, you know, you often see there's a struggle later on to sustain that, or, you know, the expectations are so huge. It's hard to continue, whatever it is. None of it's especially easy, which again is why it's so important to have community, to be there to support each other, to have things like this podcast where we can hear about different people's stories and say, oh, okay, so for that person, that thing was really hard and that's not unlike what I'm going through. And I feel a little bit seen, and that sort of empathy and compassion for each other's experiences is really vital.
Yeah. I can't even begin to imagine the amount of work it took for you guys to renovate. It was a dairy farm.
Yeah. A very dilapidated dairy farm. Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. I mean, this is a true story. I swear to God, this is all true. My kitchen sink, the stream is pretty weak. And I can't figure out why that is. And it's bothering the hell out of me. That's what I'm dealing with. Anyway, and it's distracting. My brain, I'm very easily distracted, and for the worse. If something like, I know my sink isn't working right now as I'm talking to you, and it is front of mind, I can't push it back. That's just not how my brain works. But anyway, my point is, that's a sink. I'm going to figure it out. It's going to take me a couple of hours. You renovated a dairy farm and turned it into this oasis for illustrators and writers. First of all, nicely done.
Thank you.
And secondly, I guess I have a question here. I should have a question here. What do you think, or what do you see is the common reason why illustrators, let's not forget writers, even though some of them forget illustrators and book launch announcements and interviews, whatnot. Side note, hey, writers, you're going to want to turn up the volume on this one for a second. All right, you ready? When someone compliments the pictures in your picture book, do not respond with, thank you. Respond with, I know. The illustrator, say their name, their full name, did such a great job. I digress. The first part of this question is good. The second part is stupid. The first part is, what's the most common reason why people go there? And the second stupid question, even though I'm asking this, is, do you think they find it?
Yes, to the second part. And the first part, I think is...
That is a dumb question. I appreciate your honesty.
The first part, I think people come looking for community, because so many of us, and I say us, but I'm actually not one of them, so many of us work alone in isolation. And I am not one of them because I share a studio in Brooklyn with 5 other children's bookmakers, which is the other real reason that Milkwood came about in the first place, which was we have...
You still do? That still goes on?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not there as much as I was in the past because of Milkwood. But no, I'm still very much there. And I did try to leave at one point, and there was an uproar. And so I have reduced my space to a corner, a ceremonial corner.
Sergio yelled at you.
Well, Sergio defected to Italy, so he's in no place.
If you're going to defect, go to Italy.
Exactly. He is in no place to object. But the The other 5 are Brian Floca, Dasha Tolstikova, Rowboat Watkins, Doug Salati, and Johnny Marciano, and John Bemelmans Marciano, who I know you know, and worked with back in the day. They are my work family, and along with Sergio as well, who used to be part of our studio before the aforementioned defection. And
ciao, Sergio, if you're listening.
Yeah, he won't be. They are.
He better be.
Such an incredibly important part of my life. We are for each other, not only now, family in terms of we're there for each other with every kind of life event that happens, because we've been together in one form or another for about 15 years at this point. But from an illustration point of view, we make books in each other's company. And that means, so for Doug Salati, for instance, who is our newest member, I think he's been, 5-6 years ago he came.
Yes.
He was working on his own, and he came into the studio, and the most important thing that he saw immediately was we were all working, and he came in kind of procrastinating and not quite sure what he was going to work on. And he was like, oh, holy shit, everybody in here is like head down working. It just got him going. And it is that peer group pressure of productivity that makes you, especially if, like many of us, we're easily distracted, to have somebody in the same space diligently applying themselves to the task at hand is incredibly inspiring. And then to see what we're all making, and it's so different, but to walk past Brian's desk where he's doing some exquisite watercolor pen and ink thing that's just materializing on the page with the sort of in-depth research that I'm not sure anybody else in our field is doing quite the way Brian Floca does, or Rowboat Watkins, who is filling sketchbook after sketchbook with the funniest, weirdest, most absurd little drawings that most of which the world will never see, because he's so prolific and is making these incredible images that, the inside of his brain is astonishing. Johnny is just writing. So we don't get to see so much of what he's doing, but then a book just comes out. Dasha has this looseness that I envy so much. She just takes this thing that she sees and turns it into something funny and true with this sort of squiggly line, like she's been drawing the same way since she was 5 years old, and it's just perfect and hilarious and beautiful as well, because she then paints, and the combination of the two things are beautiful. And then Doug just makes me want to weep and takes my breath away. His work is so spectacular, and when I see just the things that he sort of tosses aside on his desk, it's that combination of deep envy and admiration, which is the sort of perfect combination. So that's what I live with. That's what I work with. And this is a very long-winded way of getting to answer your actual question, which is to be in the space with other people making is, I think, what a lot of people come to Milkwood for. Yeah. If people apply and say, I really want to be left alone to work on my own thing, we sort of say, I think this is not the place for you. So it is that working alongside one another in the big art studio or the library or wherever somebody wants to find their place, and then coming back together at meal times. And then it's the conversations. It's the conversations about everything from craft to the industry gossip, to the steps of getting published, being published, having an agent, losing an agent, finding an agent, the editorial relationship, the art director editor relationship, all of these things, these conversations that when you have 10 people in a room with varied experiences and backgrounds, become so rich and so valuable and such a fantastic resource. And then that those little groups of 10 have stayed as these support groups, these little networks. Almost every single group over the past 5 years has stayed in touch, and they, just like we do in the studio, they share, they have Zooms if they're far flung around the country or the world, or they actually have meetups and go to shows together, or the Society of Illustrators together, or they have they sketch together and they send each other projects, and I'm stuck on this cover. Here are 3 variations. What do you guys think? And then births of children and divorces and difficult times as well. It's astonishing. So that's a big, long answer to the first question. The second is a shorter answer, which I think people come to Milkwood for the gift of time. The time to do something that is perhaps out of the ordinary for what they usually do, because we all get into a rut. And when we have deadlines, I think it's incredibly difficult to feel experimental or to feel that we can be loose or playful or try something that may not work when there's the crushing feeling of, I can't waste a day doing something. It's that idea I'm going to waste time, even though we know it's never a waste of time. We know that everything we're making, however experimental, is useful and will inform the thing that we ultimately make. It can feel like I've wasted a day, but when they come to Milkwood and they have a week, they can feel like, oh, I'm going to try pastels or acrylics or collage because this stuff is here and someone next to me is doing it and I hadn't thought of doing it, but what the hell, I'm going to give this a go and I'm going to see where it takes me, because I'm sick of working digitally and feeling like my work looks the same as a lot of other people's, and I want to try something new, and I'm going to go out and walk and find a stick and come back and dip it in mud and crumple up my piece of paper and scan it in and do something that I didn't think I was going to do at 8 o'clock this morning. Because a lot of people who come to Milkwood are carers for other people. The thing that we often hear is, this is the first time in a long time that no one has asked me to do something for them. No one has asked me where to find something, or just my time has been my own. And so the gift of time, that's the other reason people come.
I'm smiling and I'm saying this with the utmost amount of love. My children have this innate ability, downright superpower. When I'm finished a meeting, usually right after a meeting, which is, a pretty intense 1-hour talk with an illustrator about art and whatnot, and frustrations in life and things. After the call is over, I wouldn't mind like a minute, to just stare at the wall for a second before I kind of lock back in and prepare for my next meeting. They must have either super hearing or something. But every time I finish a talk, I'm like, all right, Sophie, thanks a lot.
And
talk
then
to you
it's
the next
just
2 weeks.
right there.
I hear the steps.
Yeah.
Hey, so here's what we need. Can we go to dip it? And I'm just like, oh my God, guys. And it would be nice to like be out for a week. And I'm saying this with so much love, because I know the minute they leave my house, I'm going to basically cry every day.
And I will just
amend
or add to what I just said, which is that it is mostly women. And obviously there are a lot of men who are the primary caregivers in their families too, but we don't see so many of them at Milkwood for whatever reason.
Do you have, you've mentioned in other interviews, in this interview, Beatrix Potter, Barbara Cooney, Virginia Lee Burton, Shaun, Carson Ellis, so on and so forth, as favorites, right?
Sure.
Do you have a lesser known illustrator favorite that you wish more people knew about?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay. I have recently followed. So I go to the Bologna Book Fair as many times as I possibly can, the children's book fair. It is such a joy, and it is so incredibly inspiring to see the books that are being made around the world, and also to shift the perspective that it is not, we are so US centric. We are so consumed with our own tiny part of the children's book industry, but out there in the world, it's this big, rich, diverse planet of children and books being made for children and the people making them. And so it is thrilling to go to the Bologna Book Fair and see books being made in Peru or Afghanistan or Ukraine in spite of the war, this rich children's book industry in Ukraine, and to go to the illustration hall and to look at the work, and it's my favorite thing to do. So I recently started following Myoyim, Myoyim, whose work is so beautiful. She is Korean, based in Australia. Victoria Semykina, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Victoria, Semykina. She is Russian, but based in Bologna. Her work is spectacular.
Nice.
Raquel Catalina is making beautiful books that have just such tender children in them. She's really observant about how a child moves through space, and the emotional, tender drawings that just look like her and nobody else. Raquel Catalina, she's Spanish. Jenny Meilihove, I think Meilihove. She's, I think she's in Israel. Okay. Just beautiful, beautiful work being made. And then, my favorites who have been around for a long time and my heroes, Kitty Crowther, who is Swedish English. Yeah, Beatrice Alemagna, we talked about. I love Laura Carlin's work. Katya Chen, Isabel Arsenault, Rebecca Green, who I know you've spoken to. Cece Bell, who is one of the funniest people on the face of the earth.
El Defo. Right?
Yeah.
Among other books.
Myra Kalman, who is probably one of my North Stars. I have the phrase in my head is just always, be more like Myra.
Yeah, that was a great chat.
Oh, she's brilliant.
So good.
She is brilliant.
Interestingly, this is good because I was expecting you to go further back in time, but you didn't, which is great because I will go further back in time. So you're going contemporary.
Yeah.
I'm loving that. And I will go 150 to 250 years older. One is specific for you. I looked this one up for you.
Okay.
There's an illustrator that I wrote about on Substack ages ago. First on Instagram, and then I moved over to Substack. But anyway, whatever. That's another story. Her name is Cecilia May Gibbs.
Oh,
are you familiar with her?
Of course.
Of course you are. Why would you be familiar with her?
She is one of the very first books I had as a child, Snugglepot and Cuddle Pie. She's an Australian hero. And her books are so fantastic because, not unlike Beatrix Potter, they're on the surface adorable, but they have this dark streak, this edge to them that is so fantastic. Yeah, funny and subversive and just a little unsettling. Like children.
I learned that in 1919, there was a deadly pandemic. Some people might be aware of it. And during that pandemic, Australian officials launched a campaign. Tell me if this sounds familiar. They launched a campaign to raise awareness on the importance of wearing masks.
Right, the Spanish flu we're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, so they turned to Gibbs and they asked her to create these characters that she was known for. And she created a piece with these characters that I forgot what the characters' names were.
Snugglepot and Cuddle Pie.
With masks on, basically saying, wear a mask.
Amazing. I will have to look that up.
That's a true story.
That's fantastic.
The other illustrator I have for you, you may even know her. Her name is Eleanor Vere Boyle.
Oh.
Scottish, Victorian. And interestingly, like Gibbs and Potter, she used her success as an illustrator, sort of leveraged that success to help those in need. And it was Victorian era. This is maybe 60 years before Potter. Not to say that Potter had it easy, but Eleanor had to sign her work EVB so that,
Okay, no, she was not the wife of a general. Oh, Vere. Okay, now I'm finding her.
Vere, Vere.
Oh, okay. Right. No, I did not know her, have not seen her. I will read about her. Great. Thank you.
I see her work and I see your work and I see a little bit of her.
Oh, okay.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, Beatrix Potter is one of my absolute heroes.
She's my 100% number one favorite.
Yeah.
Number one favorite.
And again,
I did my master's thesis on her.
Oh, you did? Ah, amazing. Have you visited her house in the Lakes District? Oh, it is really, really wonderful.
I will.
Yeah. And the library they have in town have lots of her drawings of mushrooms and toadstools and fungi that are just astonishing.
Absolutely. And you won't even know it's her. Like if it didn't say Beatrix Potter, that artwork doesn't look like her books. There's this one that I recall of a fish that she did that just looks so surreal.
I remember once I was with my children in London at the British Museum, and we were exploring, I think it was around the mummies. We were looking at mummified cats, and this sort of what seemed like a panel in the wall opened and someone came out of it, and it was just like a white part of the wall. We didn't even know it was a door. There was no handle or anything. It was like a secret door. Because we were already feeling like we were in the world of secret books, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we might step into a magical wardrobe, I put my foot in the door as it was closing. Nice. And we snuck through this door, and it was a back entrance. We found ourselves inside the library of the museum. In, a single mother with 2 children standing inside this library where people were looking at Da Vinci drawings. I mean, I think we just walked in there and held our breaths. And the librarian greeted us as though we'd had an appointment and everything, which we had not. And she said, "What would you like to see?" And I said, I don't know. And she said, "Well, I just had the Flopsy bunnies out. Would you like to see them?" And I was just, how is this happening? And so the kids and I got to look at the original art from the Flopsy bunnies just because we went in through a back door, which obviously I'm not condoning at all. However, if a door is open, look, there is a metaphor, Giuseppe. If a door is open, stick your foot in it, because you never know what might be through the other side.
Well, that more than cancels out retiring the Tooth Fairy.
I think so. Think so. Thank you. I remind my son of that.
I can't be jealous because I visited the Victoria and Albert Museum and went into the archives with the curator and got to handle with gloves and all the things.
Did you see the shepherd drawings as well?
Artwork, yes, I did.
Yes, and the Edward Lear.
I did not see Lear.
Oh my God, yeah. There's so much out there that all you have to do is ask and make an appointment. But it's accessible to all of us.
Or stick a foot in it.
Yeah, or stick a foot in and go in the back way. But yeah, I've learned that if you ask nicely and give people enough warning, you can see things. We can access things. It's amazing. The world is amazing.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time on this story, but I know the curator of the Brandywine, who I know you know, Amanda.
Yes.
If you're listening, Amanda, what's up? And I asked her if she had. There was a painting I was looking for of Howard Pyle, who's one of my personal top 5 favorite illustrators. And there was a specific painting, wasn't like a famous painting of his, but a painting that he had done of a Delaware beachside that I learned was where he vacationed, and it's also where I grew up vacationing. I love the connection there, right? So I found this painting and I learned that the Brandywine had it, and simply just asked her, like, "Hi, you wouldn't happen to have a high resolution version of this, would you?" And she did. She emailed it to me. I printed the frick out of it, framed it, and now it's in my living room.
That's lovely.
So, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I had a question here I want to get to because we're running out of time. I was talking to Leonard Marcus about renaming the Caldecott Medal, the Caldecott in general. I think it's, no disrespect to Caldecott, obviously. He changed the game, of course, with his work. But I just find it always funny that the Caldecott is a medal that's awarded to only American illustrators, but it's named after a former British banker turned bookmaker who died in St. Augustine, Florida, or buried there anyway. Yeah. I just find it odd. No disrespect, right? So I'm throwing names at Leonard, saying, shouldn't it be called like the Sendak or the Cooney or someone like, someone big. And he said, absolutely not. It should be Caldecott. So I lost that debate. For you, the question is, so you won 2 Caldecott medals in 2016 for Finding Winnie and 2019 for Hello Lighthouse. I ask this when I have a Caldecott winner on, whether it's an honor or a medal, where were they when they got the call? Which one of these two was the funnier call or the more interesting, the less expected call?
So I'm going to throw this question back to you. Do you think anyone really cares about? Sorry, that's a great question. Rude. That sounds so rude.
No, please.
I just think about, I've been on a bunch of panels and that question gets asked, and I look out at the room and it's a room of, maybe it's teachers and librarians, or maybe it's a community who have donated money to help get books to their, the part of their population that is a book desert or whatever it is. And I wonder, do they really want to know about the phone call? I will say this.
I actually have an answer to your question.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you want to jump in with it, or?
Well, it's really quick. That's an excellent question. When I was an art director at conferences, folks would sometimes ask me like personal questions. Like at these conferences, there's 30 or 40 illustrators in the room, and after the presentation, there's a Q&A, and someone will say something like, "How did you become an art director?" And it's not that they want to become an art director; they just want to know like how I became one. And I have pushed back a little bit on that. I'm like, do you guys even care? Like, who cares how I became an art director? Don't you want to know like what you should work on in your portfolio? So I know exactly where you're coming from. And that is not rude. And I love it when illustrators kind of push back on stuff. So how I see this really is as a friend, I would ask you, if you were my friend, what am I trying to say? Think, then speak. If you were my friend and we were truly hanging out at a cafe, drinking tea, I would absolutely ask you that question. So why wouldn't I ask you that here? You know what I mean?
Sure,
that's how I see these questions.
Okay, I'll give you the answer as quickly as I can, which is the first call came later than I thought the calls were meant to come. So I had given up thinking that I might have a call. And years before that, I had never imagined that call would ever come. But this year there'd been a lot of talk, which can be a dangerous thing. And I make a habit of trying to send little notes to my friends in the industry around this time every year, because it's a difficult thing. We place enormous importance on these medals at the same time as we know that they're important, and also they're not to most children. They're not to the kid who falls in love with the book that they fall in love with.
Lei Wen Pham said something similar to that.
Exactly. And again, out of our very small industry, you step out anywhere else and they've never heard of it, and it means absolutely nothing at all. So, and that is not to say that I'm not phenomenally grateful to the committees of librarians who spend so much of their own time and resources
of course.
Looking at books. And that is one of the greatest gifts, is to have people who care deeply about books for children spending the time really, really, really looking at them and talking about them is fantastic. And so the trickle down effect of that, of knowing that your book is going to go out in the world in a way it might not have otherwise, is incredibly meaningful. So the first call I had a secret hope, and the hope had been dashed. And in the kind of moments afterwards of realizing, well, the phone's not going to ring, Ed and I were making school lunches for our kids, and it just struck me with just this great revelation how incredibly lucky I felt to be in love, to have healthy children, and to be able to make books that it makes me happier than anything imaginable. It's what I wanted to do since I was 7 years old, and that I get to do this. And that's when the phone rang, and it almost felt like, I had to get to that process where I didn't need it or didn't, it didn't matter for then it to arrive. And so that felt kind of profound. And then the second time was actually when the phone rang and they told me I was in Myanmar, and I didn't believe it. And then I tried to give it back. I said, no. This is no. I think you've made a mistake. And is it too late? Because, there were all these other books. And then I realized how rude that was, that they'd spent a year reaching this conclusion and that I was undermining all of their hard work. It was the second thing that dawned on me was how I felt when my second child was born. And I thought I didn't want to give him back. It didn't feel like too much good fortune, because that was my response to it. This is too much good fortune, and it's I can't deal with it. It's too much. I don't deserve it. And then I thought I didn't feel like that about my second child. I felt just so incredibly grateful, and so that I turned myself around, and that was useful. So those were the calls, and it is.
People won't want to know the answers.
I just want to be mindful of that it is this long journey that we're all on, and that very, very few people get to have that experience, and let alone get to have it twice. So,
right. Well, for folks listening who, maybe want to down the line in their career not answer how did you get the Caldecott call question, what piece of advice would you love to share with them or leave them with, or words of encouragement, or really anything for folks listening from you to them?
I think taking it seriously, to go back to something that we talked about an hour ago, valuing the work that you're making and its place in the great long history of work that we're all making, and trying to make it the very, very best that it can be, however that happens for you. And maybe it is making time to make all the mistakes and to try new things the time that we don't allow ourselves enough. Maybe it is finding a community of peers who are making interesting things so that we can lift each other up and support each other and inspire each other and all of those things. And I think the other thing is to establish a version of a North Star. And for me, it's like be more like Myra, whoever that is. And it doesn't have to be one person. It can be a bunch, but people you really admire, and I keep them in my head. I keep Kate DiCamillo and Anne Patchett in my head, especially when I'm writing, and it is a way of like sitting up a little bit straighter and taking myself seriously and trying to not do anything half-heartedly.
Perfect. Cue the music.
Also, put your foot in an open door.
To learn more about Sophie and her books, visit sophieblackall.com. To learn more about Milkwood, visit milkwoodfarm.org. If you find value in this podcast, consider becoming a patron. In return, you can access bonus episodes, receive invitations to our Art Directors After Hours series, and get a 10% off discount code for all ID offerings. Become a patron by visiting patreon.com/illustrationdept. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.